All right, we're live with Mayor Derek Wood, the town of Dumfries. My name is Uriah Kiser. I am the publisher of Potomac Local News. This is the Potomac Local News live podcast. We're live today on Facebook on Monday, January 9th. Thanks for coming in. Everybody come in and hang out with us. And if, of course, you missed this, this will be, you can rewatch this on Facebook, and we'll also put this in our YouTube page. So thank you for everybody watching, coming in. Mayor Wood, thank you for jumping on with us and talking to us about aptly what's going on in Dumfries. That's what we're calling this one. You've had a big week this past week. You had your annual State of the Town. You guys are making big moves there in Dumfries, bringing in, if you haven't driven on 95 lately, you've probably seen what's coming into Dumfries. But I'll let you get into it, Mayor Wood. Thanks for coming on. Tell us what's going on in Dumfries.
Well, listen, first of all, thank you for this platform and this ability to be able to spotlight Dumfries. And like you said, I'm Mayor Derek Wood. I'm the mayor of the oldest continuously chartered town in Virginia. And I'm proud to say that, understanding that now we're building a legacy in Dumfries. And what you see happening in Dumfries right now is just a rediscovery as who we always been. Those who don't know, Dumfries was officially chartered by the General Assembly in 1749, and we were built on this thriving waterfront community, right? We had the huge port that, as you know, rivaled Baltimore. It rivaled New York. I think it was we were competing with them. I think in 1789, 1790, we were sending out almost more tonnage of tobacco and goods out of the port right here in Dumfries than was coming out of some of those other major ports. So Dumfries was a very significant when we were created. And there were about 74 years, Uriah. I don't know if your listeners knew this, but there was 74 years where Dumfries didn't have a government. There was no local control. There was no laws and I think it was from 18 something to 1961, Dumfries was a little sleepy town. And when they lost their waterfront, I want to say it was the Great Migration from Dumfries, right? People begin to move north to Alexandria because Alexandria had their waterfront. They begin to move south to the Rappahannock. What really took Dumfries out of significance is when they lost the courthouse. And the courthouse, because Dumfries used to be Prince William County seat. And Prince William County was so big, they moved the courthouse to Brentsville, somewhere else, and now it's in Manassas.
Later on in Manassas, right. And if you look at the street, I mean, if you look at an old map, and this is what gets me every time I go over to like Weems Botts Museum and hang out, right? You look at the old street grid where Route 1 is now, and then you have that Duke Street and Cameron Street and up there. I mean, it kind of looks like Old Town Alexandria because the water used to come right up to where we drive through Dumfries right now.
So, I'm glad you said that because here's a fun fact. Dumfries and Alexandria were chartered on the exact same day from the General Assembly, May 11, 1749, right? And we both have Scottish heritage, right? We both have Scottish roots, Dumfriesshire of Scotland and Alexandria of Scotland, right? When I found this out when I was at the Scottish Embassy, because I didn't know this, but there was a house in Dumfries that they split up and they took to Alexandria so Alexandria could get their charter, right? Because they didn't have nothing established there yet.
Interesting.
And so Alexandria was almost birthed out of Dumfries, right? We got our charter first because, the General Assembly at the time was in Williamsburg. They came up on horse. They stopped in Dumfries, and then an hour or so later, they made it to Alexandria. Alexandria got their charter. So we're the oldest continuously chartered because we never dissolved our charter. Even though we were a sleepy government, we never went to the General Assembly to dissolve our charter. Eventually, Alexandria became a city, so their charter kind of went away and they became a city. They were no longer a town, right? Yeah. Dumfries stayed a town. I think really happened to Dumfries around 1961 when the guys came together to recharter is they looked at, hey, we need to govern ourselves, right? We're on Route 1, this major corridor. Probably at the time they were talking about building I-95, right? And so Dumfries was just this little drive-through. I think at one time it had got reduced to almost what I read somewhere, maybe about 50 or 54 families was in Dumfries. It was a very small, dilapidated population, right? And when they did their charter, they reincorporated and they went and drew their boundary lines. I think, and I can't prove this, Uriah, that around that time is when they really started having a contentious relationship with the county, because I think they was afraid they were going to become an independent city, right? And then the county would lose their real estate taxes. Because I think from 1961, even when I got on in 2012, there was this contentious, there wasn't this strong working relationship with the county or a lot of their federal partners. And I think during that time, it was because Dumfries was fighting with, why do we have to pay taxes to the county type of situation.
And so the town has come a long way since 1961, and even longer way from, really, you think about 2012, since you got on, right? So you just had your state of the town address. It was a big shindig. You had a lot of elected officials there, some community members there. You talked about your vision for the town, and when you continue to say it's one that you drive to, not just drive through. I think we've heard that, and now that I'm repeating that verbatim, I'm probably helping you with that message and getting it out there. So I'll let you talk more about your address and what you guys did Thursday night, and the importance of updating the residents on the progress the town has made.
Yeah, I told them that, I never imagined running a town was like a big family dinner, right? Except the family keeps growing, and everybody has an opinion about the menu, and the crescendo, I told them that, when you're hosting a family dinner, what you got to realize as the host is the party. The family dinner isn't about the host. It's not about me. It's about all the people who sit around the table. And so the Dumfries that we build in, we can't build it without people. We can't build it without a sense of community and the people being involved. And so when you look at our progress that we made from 2012 to even 2014, and you wrote about this tons in 2014, 15, the landfill, right? Which was probably the biggest eyesore, the biggest thing that we did during that time, during those years, was we had a closure date for that landfill, right? And that was 2034.
Right.
And so we had a host agreement, we were making money, and we had a closure date. And then in 2018, when, some developers, Churchill, Colonial Downs at the time, was looking for a place, just had the bright idea, hey, why don't you buy the landfill? And they was like, we can't build on the landfill. I said, you're right. I said, but here's what I know. There's 15 acres that's zone residential that's prime on I-95. And they was like, really? I was like, yeah. I said, now, we need a convention center. And they looked at me like, a convention center? Why do you need a convention center in Dumfries, right? And, we knew at the time, all the banquets and the galas, from the stuff that the chamber does, the stuff that the NAACP was doing. We were going all the way to Fort Belvoir. We were trying to find stuff on Quantico. There was just no banquet space. And so to be able to get them to not only buy it, but to shut the place down almost 10 years earlier, and 40 years to the date it's open. I think people needed to understand the magnitude, because that was huge. I think I had found some Washington Post articles in 1984, 83, where somebody wanted to build a whole nother community, almost like Williamstown, on that landfill. And it was somebody on the council. It was quoted in the Washington Post that said, we don't want another Williamstown over there. And eventually somebody came and got permits for land gushers that became the landfill. The guy who was working at zoning of the town quit and went and worked for the landfill over there.
Wow.
So it was, it's some interesting story. And I talked to Butch Bonner, who was the mayor at the time. He's still alive. I talked to him about what happened during that time, because it's important. If you're looking at your future and what's possible, it's important to know how we got to where we're at, right? And I know you've seen, I've really grown into becoming that ambassador, right? An ambassador really embodies the community that they're in, and just learning that history. I remember when I first met Lee Lanson, he said, I'm the town historian, before he passed around, and, didn't understand at the time when I first got elected how important the history was, for where we're at now and how it ties into where we're going.
Yeah.
And with that landfill closing down 10 years early, Uriah, We got rid of one of the stinkiest thing in this town. You know, it went from a smelly a smelly landfill to a rose.
Yeah, and that's what I spent so much time writing about is how stinky it was when it rained at that landfill. And I couldn't tell you how many times I went out there and talked to the neighbors and drove by myself. And I mean, that sulfur smell, because it was a construction debris landfill, and that's what's buried there, right?
Yeah,
It's not trash. It's not like
no, no, no.
the
Not
county
household
landfill.
trash. Yeah, yeah,
But it's construction debris. So you got metal and concrete and blah blah blah, these stuff from construction sites. And so and that site there, it's interesting because I this past week I went down to Spotsylvania. They're building that new Kalahari Indoor Water Park Convention Center resort, and the guy who is building that, he has 4 or 5 of them. I think this is their 5th one in Virginia. The fifth one they're building here in Virginia. The others are across the country. And he said this site right here on I-95 is the best site we ever had. It's a 12 out of a 10. It's right here and where everybody can see it. And I think that's what people want. I think you saw that. You had that in Dumfries. And I think that's one of the reasons why they were so quick to jump on that site, because it is on Interstate 95, the East Coast's main street.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's it's a prime. I think we're becoming the premier gaming destination, but restaurants. And once we get phase 2 up with the second tower with hotel rooms, and I'm hoping we can negotiate more amenities as we get to that. But the park is going to open actually this fall. You know, to see that landfill. Think about this. In 2034, the town of Dumfries was going to have to take ownership. In the host agreement, we was going to have to take ownership of that landfill. What were we going to do with that landfill, right? At that particular time. We've now we partnered with Churchill Downs, and we've increased our revenue by 300% over the last 3 or 4 years, right? Which was unprecedented. And you saw Chairman Torian just added to the budget appropriations where next year, July 1, 2026, we're going to keep 100% of the gaming tax, and it's no longer going to go to New Kent. Right. So we'll end up doubling our revenue. You know, New Kent was getting 50% of every Rosie's that was open of their gaming revenue tax.
Yeah. Yeah. That's and so since they've come in, we've just seen the budget grow because of the revenues that are coming in from the Rose. So give us just a sort of an update, for those who have not been, right?
Okay.
Those who don't know exactly what's in there right now, that they have a gaming center set up. We know that there's a hotel there. I know there are several restaurants. I've been into some of the restaurants myself, but lay the land for us. Like, for those who haven't been to the Rose yet, what is there and what is still yet to come?
Yeah. So if you go in there now, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. If you go into the hotel side, there's a food court that has about 5 restaurants there right now. And that's the side where you don't have to be 21 to get to. You have a Crabtastic, which is a seafood spot. You have a Mamma Mia's, which is an Italian spot. You have a Southern Spin, which is like a soul food type of spot that you get your ribs and your chicken and stuff like that. You have the R Burger, which has been voted the best burger spot in the county the last few years. And you have a little bistro, and you have a little corner hotel bar on that side. Now, when you enter over to the gaming side, well, you have to be 21 to get on that side. We have the Playbook Sports Bar, huge sports bar. People were in there watching the Commanders games all season, basketball games. It's a huge sports bar. It's also the only place where you can sit in and you can actually bet on the Kentucky Derby and live horse racing while you're watching it, because they have off-track betting. And so there's a whole room of off-track betting in there. So you can watch all the horse racing simulcasts all around the world right in this one room. And then, our personal favorite, most people don't know, is Dumfries has a steakhouse. Yes, a tablecloth, fine dining steakhouse called the 1609 Steakhouse. Now, a lot of people don't know this, so this will be a fun fact. 1609 is the year that, 1, horse racing came to Virginia. 2, 1609 is the House resolution in 2018 that was introduced to bring the gaming emporium, right, to bring off-track betting and these machines to Virginia. So in 2018, House Resolution 1609 was the legislation that allowed us to have this. And so the restaurant is named after that House bill. So that's a fun fact.
Got you. Wow. Okay, I didn't know that. So that's a good tie-in. So this is all happening here right off of 95. But you're also focused on what's happening on the original highway that brought people to Dumfries, and that is the Potomac River and the Quantico Creek. And you've got some stuff happening there too. So tell us about your push to reinvigorate the waterfront in Dumfries.
Yeah, I think that, when we did our comp plan in 2014, it was at that time that the council and the community said we wanted to take the lead at revitalizing Quantico Creek. When I became the mayor, it became one of my principal thoughts. How can we recapture the waterfront? Herb Campbell was still alive at the time. Herb Campbell came to me. He sat down and he rolled out the blueprint on what he already had. He owned a majority of the property in Dumfries that was on the waterfront and gave me a historical perspective of what was happening at the waterfront. He had a vision himself of revitalizing it. And so I thank Herb Campbell for coming in to kind of putting a stick of dynamite and showing me what was possible at that waterfront. At the time, it was pretty much a salvage yard. I know you probably seen that, a chop shop. People didn't want
Yeah.
to go over there. He passed away during the pandemic. We've been dealing with his estate, mainly his sons, and we now have it under contract. We've been under contract with them since December to purchase the land over there. Once all the environmental get cleared, and they're doing their part with working with DEQ to make sure we deal with all the environmental issues and all the due diligence is done, then we'll go to closing. We will claim 160 acres on the frontage and the mouth of Quantico Creek right there in Dumfries. And if I had a map to show you, I would show you. But so then from there, the vision, right? Most people, we've been talking to the trails, right? We want to connect to the National Trails Network, build our own boardwalk. I think the vision is to be able to really bring in, we want to do some recreational boating,
Yeah.
right? We might not could be able to do commercial boating, but if we could bring kayaks and we could bring small crafts, I would love to get, just me, I would love to get a federal emergency response launch, right, built in Dumfries, right? Get FEMA involved, right? Because when flooding and stuff happens around, we have no emergency response nowhere around the Occoquan, Potomac, and none of that. So if I can get an emergency response, and then now we bring in some type of training facility. I know up at Belmont Bay, they have George Mason.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got a vision. Well, why don't we bring entrepreneurial co-working space? Why don't we bring some type of vocational school? Or why don't we partner with maybe even an HBCU like Virginia State or Norfolk State and get them to Northern Virginia? I know my former colleague at NVRC had worked out some things where they had some articulation agreements and some things with Nova. But what if we brought now all the people who started school, now they have a place right there to finish it, and now we do some research. Ecotourism is also going to be a huge thing on that waterfront, right? Because you have so much protected wildlife out there. There are eagles out there, there are hawks, right? There's all that hydrilla that needs to get cleaned up. And I didn't know it, Uriah, but there's a huge business for ecotourism where people just come out, they do that camping and all of that. And so ecotourism would be another huge thing we can build. Restaurants. I know Tim's River Shore really wants to come back to Prince William County. He really wants to come back north.
Yeah.
His
Yeah,
family.
that restaurant was always one of his best performing restaurants right there. And when they chose when the people I guess who own Potomac Shores, they own the land under his restaurant, and they chose not to re-up his his lease on that property. It was a blow for him, and so that would be a homecoming, right? If you got Tim to come back.
Yeah. I know he's interested. So Tim's on the waterfront, and so
he's breaking news on Potomac Local. I like that too. A possible comeback. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, possible comeback. We're a little ways out. There's a lot of work that has to be done on the waterfront. From partnerships we got to form. We're trying to right now. We got a multi-purpose grant last year, $1 million. The consultants are now beginning to work. The environmental, the engineers. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I had an initial report from the Army Corps engineers that told me what was kind of in there, what was going to happen. The biggest challenge with coming out of Quantico Creek now, at the end, where the train tracks is, there's a bridge. Now, what I found out, maybe 3 years ago, is that bridge is about 8 feet off the water.
It is low. It is low.
So now it messes me up from being able to have any commercial boats come in and out of there. And so you
Mhm.
got your pontoon boats and all that other stuff. And then the silt that's in there, a lot of the silt has to get moved out. And the good thing is, I think the county now has a relationship with Quantico, who wants a lot of that silt.
Well, the county came in under when Frank Principe was still the supervisor in Woodbridge. So this has been a few years ago, 2018, 2017, could have been as late as 2019. But anyway, they came in at I believe it was the Neabsco Creek, and they came in up at Hampton's Landing Marina and dredged that out. Right, because they had some problems getting in boats and whatnot. So it has been done, and they took that silt over to the landfill in Prince William County over off 234, where it's still sitting there today.
Wow.
Right. So it has been done before. And, it just makes me think, they're building that long bridge there between Arlington and DC because they're adding a third track to make, to get more people on Amtrak and VRE and expand rail service. Who
And,
knows
and,
that?
and two-way, remember, because VRE right now goes one way. So
Oh,
now,
yeah. Yeah,
now
bi-directional VRE service is what they're
yeah,
talking about. So who knows? They may be, more apt to want to do something with that bridge there to make it, better. And at which point, who knows? You may have some wiggle room to get in there and say, hey, if you're going to do this, you might consider that, right? I mean, so things are like everything's moving around right now.
Yeah. So we got options. When you got a bunch of energy and revenue coming in, and you begin to build these partnerships, it gives you options to do things. And so that's the beautiful thing about the waterfront, right? Because Dumfries, and here's the thing in my messaging that I've been telling people, you have an underserved community that has been disconnected from this body of water since the flood of 1812, right? And nobody has thought to put any type of investment into this body of water. That's right. Like they can literally walk there, but they've been disconnected from.
Yeah.
So
And I think that's the biggest problem for our area because we are so used to going, where we go, right? And being on 95 and going shopping where we go shopping, running our errands, taking our kids where we got to take them. And the problem is we go all these places and there's this big beautiful river right to the east of us, but we can't really see it. Right, unless you're crossing over, Woodbridge, and you look out on the Occoquan, you can see further up the Potomac there, But you really get so many trees. There's development around it, and so I think it's kind of brilliant what you've done is trying to open this 160 acres back up to the to the public, and it is popular. I mean, look, during the summer, especially on a weekend, I dare you to try to get into Leesylvania State Park. I mean, it is always packed out. And so people really want to be near the water. It's just something that brings peace and calm. And, so I think it's a great idea. And it's the history of Dumfries, right? That's how Dumfries was founded.
that's it. People didn't even, it's like I'm talking to people now. They don't even realize in the logo, we got a boat and water. They're like, wait, there's waterfront property in Dumfries. Where's this water at, right? Like people don't even realize how close we are because it's been there's been no investment whatsoever, and I can't emphasize that enough. And you got a community that has been disconnected from this body of water that we have to really revitalize. And with that, the second phase or together, not separately, but now as the Route 1 widening project is happening, because, we're making progress. Route 1, we're looking at right now, Dominion is in the process of moving all the utilities. And once all the utilities on the north side of Route 1 is moved, now we're in a position to start construction. The county told me the other day, they said, we had more properties that we had to deal with on this side of Route 1 than we did all the rest of Prince William County because it was so dense in Dumfries, like the density of what we had going on.
Yeah.
And so the property acquisition and the negotiation and the land, that took a lot longer. But we're in a place now, but once those utilities are moved, we'll be ready for construction. And now we'll be able to start looking at what are we going to do when we reclaim south side of Route 1 and it becomes Dumfries Main Street, right?
Right.
And more importantly, how do we keep our townhouse community connected to our Main Street, right? And so as you look at the new comp plan, it's like how do we make it so that they can walk to Main Street, that they can walk to down where they don't feel like it's connected? Because
Yeah.
what happens now, the challenge as leaders, right? We have to look at how do we not create a train track type of situation where you got these type of people on this side of Route 1 and these people on the other side of Route 1, but I
Right.
keep everybody connected.
And to set the scene for this project, and now you're on to the third big project that's going on in Dumfries, and it's hard to keep track. You got so much going on, but the Route 1 going north is Fraley Boulevard in the town, right? And so it's Richmond Highway everywhere else, but in the town it's Fraley Boulevard, and that now it's a 2-lane stretch. You have 2 lanes going north, and then on the south side, which is already called Main Street, there's I believe it's 2 lanes. There's one going south and one going north. It's a bi-directional thing with a turn lane in the middle. But you're going to put 6 lanes of traffic on Fraley Boulevard. So you have 3 going north, 3 going south, and that's going to free up what you said will be the sort of walkable Main Street. You're going to revitalize, redo that whole area, which also is the entrance to the Rose. Right.
Yeah.
So, and where town hall is. So what's the vision there? I mean, are we going to see like, tall buildings on that, or maybe retail on the bottom, housing on the top, walkable? What's it going to look like?
If I can give you a good picture, think of something like the Mosaic District, right? And so you got 2 lanes of traffic, you got street parking, you got wide sidewalks, you got people playing out in the middle, splash pads going up with water, right? You got a little movie theater on the end, you got like a little convenience store, you got all the shops, and you got housing, right? People can just literally stay in that community, live, work, and play, right? And so you look at a very diverse community, right? What you see today is really going to shape it, and we're going to look to build the Main Street as a central place, as a place where, because you got, the challenge, right? When you're developing and when you're thinking of building a community, is what's going to make people get off 95 to stop here, right? What's going to make people say, "Oh man, I want to come to DC and go to Dumfries"? And so that's what we're faced with creating and building.
The catalyst for all of that is Route 1, and so being able to widen that northbound section of Fraley Boulevard. Where are we on that? You talked about utility relocation, and so what that essentially, what that means is there's a lot of underground power lines and telephone lines or cable lines or what have you, utilities, right? And they got to move them out of the way so they can widen that road. So you said we're in that phase, and all of that wonderful sense of place, downtown mosaic-like district thing, that is all hinges on getting that Route 1 project done. So what's the timeline on that?
I think Route 1 timeline, we're looking at Route 1 being finished by 2031 is the projected.
Okay.
Full construction, all that done 2031. And so now what we're challenged to do right now, because it's not an either or, it's a both and. We have to start planning, right? So in our budget, we want to really concentrate and do some small area planning, right? And so now let's begin to draw the blueprints of what a Main Street could look like. Let's begin to get some architectures and some people. How do we build this area that we have on the waterfront and figure out how we can maximize the space, right? You heard me say in my State of the Town speech, we got all this development happening, almost $1 billion worth of projects happening in a town, and we're only 1.5 square miles big. I was with Governor Beshear last year at an event in DC, and he's bragging about bringing 150 jobs to Louisville. And I'm standing there listening to him give his speech about 150 jobs. And I mean, he's proud of this. And I'm like, I got a project in my little 1.5 square mile that's bringing 500 jobs. Mm-hmm. All right. And it was like, I need to be telling people more about these jobs that we created in this town and its economic impact. Do you know, between the jobs that we're bringing from the Rosies, the jobs we're bringing at the Rose, and the jobs that we're bringing from Wawa, it can equate to almost $1.2 billion in economic impact for this region. You
Yeah.
talk about regional impact. Like you got a town that's going from overlooked to now it's going to become unforgettable again.
Yeah. Yeah.
A town that people drove through, now they're coming to and they can't stop talking about in this region because our impact ain't just Dumfries now, but it's we're impacting this whole region by the stuff we're doing.
One of the things that is a beautiful asset to the region, and it's iconic is what it is. It's that Marine Corps Museum where you all held your 275th Charter Day celebration last year. So how do you think that's going to play in to the redevelopment of Dumfries? Because Marines from all over the world come to, I mean, obviously the United States, but people from all over the world come to this beautiful museum, which is on the town's doorstep right there at Quantico. So how does that even play into all this?
Well, once we get the second phase and we build those once we get another, hopefully 200 hotel rooms and we build that convention space, you think about it. Marines like when I joined the Marine Corps, my dad told me one thing. He said, son, those Marines, they train hard and they drink hard, right? Right? Marines were born, quite frankly, in a bar, Ton Tavern, Philadelphia. That was the birthplace of the Marine Corps. It was in a bar. And so they take pride in the Marine Corps history. Like I think that's how I developed the love for the history, because Marines take pride in their history. And so now, when anytime November 10th comes around, guess what they're looking for? They're looking for a place to hold a Marine Corps ball, a birthday party, right? Or they're looking for places to hold functions. And so what we'll have here in Dumfries is not only rooms for all their family and friends to come in, but we'll have places for them to hold their banquets, places for them to come visit, walkable. We got Archibald Henderson, the grand old man of the Marine Corps' house right here in Dumfries, who served over 39 years as the commandant of the Marine Corps.
Wow. Which so the other thing that I was point out, I think we just drove by it the other day and my wife asked me, is that place closed? And it is the Globe and Laurel, which used to be right there in Triangle, right there near the museum before they widened it out to 6 lanes, Route 1. And they moved it to Stafford back, it's probably been 15 plus years ago. I've been around for so long, all the stories that I've written run together, but I think it's closed now. I mean, it would be amazing if you could get it or something like it that represents the history that Major Spooner had right there at one point in Triangle. If you could get that to come back up there, but hey, you've got a lot on your plate. You've laid it out for us, and I appreciate you coming on with us and talking about all the projects and the 500 jobs, the reopening of the waterfront. These are all fun things that
Wawa's cutting the ribbon in September, right?
Yep.
We about a Wawa gas station, but it's not just a gas station. People don't know Wawa is really in the restaurant and food business, right? Wawa has more people standing in there buying them sandwiches and them smoothies and that coffee than they probably do people getting gas. So Wawa, if you go in Pennsylvania or Philadelphia, they don't even have gas stations at a lot of Wawas. They're just the stores. That's and so right. The gas is just a draw for some people and the Tesla charging stations, but they're in the food business. So now we bring in another restaurant, right? I love a good Wawa sandwich. And I love the mango passion fruit smoothies that I like to stop and go get. And now I don't have to go drive far for that. So Wawa is coming, right? We got another development that's looking to break ground in the next year, right on Main Street, that 280 units by Audio Partners, Eris on Main Street, right, which is going to be a huge project. And so there's a lot of good energy that's really happening when you talk about developments and stuff that's happening in Dumfries.
The Eris project, what's that going to be?
That's going to be the 280 units, townhouses, as far as multi housing units. So like almost like maybe apartments or condos type of situation. And then you could have, it could either be 2-over-2s like they have over there by Wegmans in Stonebridge, or it can be 1-over-1s, just depending on how whoever the builder is that built it. The developer now is mapping it out so a builder can come in and start building and then start selling it.
And where's this going to be in relation to Town Hall?
Right next to the Town Hall, going north of Town Hall.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha.
So where the old Fraley House, all the way up to the Axe thrift store.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And for those who may not be familiar, the Wawa is going to come in on the northbound side of Route One, just north of. Is it Grace Church? Is it Grace Church that's still there, or did Grace Church move out and it's something else now?
That's Potomac Valley, but
Potomac Valley.
it's going to be on the corner of Possum Point and Route One, across from where Harold and Kathy's used to
Yeah.
be at.
There you go. Oh, that's another thing. You got to find something to replace Harold and Kathy's, man.
Yeah,
That was a sad day when Harold and Kathy's left,
and
man.
Petrino. What's interesting is I didn't expect them to go so fast, but they were when the Route One project started, they were the first ones to cash out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, they were the first ones, and I was just like, so the Route One project, you knew it started when Harold and Kathy's closed.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's been that long that they've been working. The 7-Eleven is gone. You're starting to see a lot of the stuff up Route One, you know, that's going. Probably acquisition phase went a lot longer than I expected, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought we'd be closer to construction, but you never know, like, what's the holdup in these projects. You can project timelines, but you can see stuff like people holding out because they want more.
Yeah.
Right? They knew the project was coming.
It's a negotiation. I mean, these things are pretty common. Everybody thinks one of my favorite memes is when you look at it, it's like what the property assessor thinks my house is worth, what I think my house is worth, what the government thinks my house is. So that's always the lowest one. So they go back and forth, but it's common. So, hey, listen, Mayor, thank you so much for coming on and giving us the lowdown on what's going on in Dumfries. You can, like I said, you can check back on our website, PotomacLocalNews.com. We cover the town quite frequently, especially the council meetings and everything that happens in there. So if you want a straight source of what's happening in Dumfries, please follow us here on Facebook, on Twitter, and check us out. Get our free daily email newsletter at PotomacLocalNews.com. It costs you nothing to stay connected to your community. Thanks for joining us, everybody.